It all began on a rainy Monday morning inside the towering glass headquarters of Davis Technologies, a $20 billion empire run by a woman who had never known failure. But that very morning, Emily Davis, the iron-willed CEO, stormed through the lobby, only to stop in front of a janitor, Michael Johnson. Within minutes, she would fire him publicly, humiliating him in front of his coworkers. What Emily didn't know was that this nobody janitor would soon become the only person capable of saving her company and her life's work from total collapse. The city of Chicago gleamed with restless ambition, its skyline piercing the gray morning clouds. In the heart of downtown, Davis Technologies towered above the streets like a monument of glass and steel, reflecting both wealth and power. Inside, thousands of employees hurried through polished marble halls, their footsteps echoing with urgency. The company was more than just a business. It was a symbol of legacy, a place where dreams either soared or crumbled. Beneath the shining surface, though, tension simmered quietly. And that's where this story begins. Emily Davis walked through the lobby each morning like a queen in her kingdom. At just 30 years old, she was already CEO of a $20 billion empire, dressed in sleek black suits that spoke louder than words. Her golden hair cascaded in soft waves, framing a face that rarely softened with a smile. Employees lowered their voices when she passed, straightening their backs, afraid to look careless in her presence. Emily was admired, but she was also feared. To her, weakness was unforgivable. She lived her life in glass offices and high-rise boardrooms, her days filled with investors, contracts, and headlines. Since inheriting the company after her father's sudden passing, Emily had fought endlessly to prove herself. Every decision, every late-night meeting was made with his memory in mind, as if he were still watching from the corner of the room. Yet behind her steely exterior was a young woman carrying the weight of expectations far too heavy for one heart. But she never let anyone see that. Vulnerability was not an option. Down in the basement, where the hum of machinery replaced the sound of ringing phones, worked Michael Johnson. 35, broad-shouldered, his gray jumpsuit hugged the strong build of a man who had spent his life laboring. His beard was neatly trimmed, his short dark hair slicked back each morning before dawn. Unlike the executives upstairs, Michael's tools were not laptops and stock reports, but buckets, mops, and the silent dignity of hard work. Few knew his name, even fewer cared to ask. Michael's story, however, was far from ordinary. Years ago, he had been a rising cybersecurity specialist with a future brighter than neon lights. But life had a way of tearing down even the strongest. His wife's illness drained their savings, and her passing left him shattered, clutching onto a daughter who became his only reason to breathe. To keep food on the table, he traded his old career for the steady paycheck of a janitor. What mattered now wasn't pride, it was survival. His daughter Lily was 8 years old and the light in his weary eyes. Every morning before work, he braided her hair clumsily, packed her lunch with care, and walked her to the school bus with a smile that masked the heaviness in his chest. At night, when the world slept, he read her bedtime stories until her tiny eyelids closed. To Lily, her father wasn't just a janitor. He was the strongest man alive, her shield, her comfort, her everything. Despite the hardships, Michael carried himself with quiet strength. The security guards greeted him warmly, the night shift engineers trusted him like an older brother. He was the invisible backbone of the building, fixing what others broke, cleaning what others dirtied. Yet to the executives in glass offices, he was just background, the man who mopped floors, unseen and unheard. But Michael never complained. Life had taught him humility, patience, and resilience stronger than steel. Two people, two worlds. Emily, the powerful CEO who feared nothing but failure. Michael, the invisible janitor who lived only for his daughter. They crossed the same lobby each day without truly seeing each other. To her, she was no one. To him, she was untouchable. Neither could imagine how fate was already weaving their lives together, setting the stage for a collision that would change everything forever. That Monday morning, the lobby of Davis Technologies buzzed with hurried footsteps and the low hum of conversations. Executives in polished shoes rushed past the marble floor, clutching laptops and coffee cups like lifelines. Michael, mop in hand, had just finished cleaning a wide patch near the entrance, carefully placing the bright yellow warning sign nearby. He stood for a moment, wiping sweat from his forehead before bending down again to wring out the mop. It was just another day, another shift, another silent effort no one noticed. Until she arrived. Emily strode through the glass doors with her usual authority, phone pressed tightly to her ear. Her voice was sharp, clipped, as she commanded someone on the other end, "I don't care how, just get it done." Behind her trailed a nervous assistant, clutching a thick folder of reports. Her heels clicked against the floor in rapid succession, the sound echoing like a clock counting down to disaster. All eyes in the lobby turned briefly to her. The queen had entered. No one dared to breathe too loudly. And then it happened in an instant. Emily's heel hit the freshly mopped spot, the floor still slick despite the sign standing just inches away. Her body jolted, folder flying, paper scattering like startled birds across the marble. A half-filled cup of coffee in her hand splashed forward, staining her black blazer in a sharp brown streak. Gasps erupted around the lobby. For a second, time seemed to slow, the powerful CEO flailing to regain her balance. Michael reacted instinctively, dropping his mop to step forward. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked, his voice steady, concern genuine. But Emily's face snapped toward him, eyes blazing with fury. "Are you kidding me?" she spat, brushing at the spreading stain on her clothes. "Do you realize what almost happened?" The word struck with the force of a blade, cutting through the silence that had fallen over the lobby. Everyone was watching, hearts pounding, unsure what would come next. Michael's hand lingered at his side, his jaw tightening. "There's a sign, right there," he said quietly, pointing to the bright yellow stand. His tone wasn't defensive, just calm, a man explaining the obvious truth. But Emily's anger left no space for reason. "A sign?" she repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Do you think that excuses carelessness? This is unacceptable." Her assistant stood frozen behind her, eyes darting nervously between them, wishing he could vanish. The crowd around them grew stiller, employees exchanging nervous glances. No one dared speak, no one dared move. Michael straightened his back, the strength of his frame suddenly noticeable in the spotlight of humiliation. For years, he had been invisible, just part of the background, but now every eye was on him, and the woman determined to strip him of his dignity. Emily's voice rang out, sharp and merciless. "Clean out your locker, you're finished here." A stunned silence filled the air. Michael stood motionless, his dark eyes fixed on hers, unreadable. For a brief moment, something almost like regret flickered in Emily's gaze, but she buried it instantly beneath her steel mask. Michael finally nodded once, curt and restrained. "Yes, ma'am." He bent down, picked up his mop, and walked away with slow, measured steps. The yellow sign still stood there, a mute witness to injustice. That evening, in the small apartment on the west side of the city, Michael tried to hide the weight pressing on his chest. He placed a bowl of macaroni and cheese on the table, watching Lily's face light up as she dug in. "Daddy, why are you home early?" she asked, curiosity shining in her big brown eyes. Michael forced a smile, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. But as he watched her eat, his heart ached with the question he didn't want her to ask. What happens now? The days after his firing dragged on like endless nights. Michael sat at the kitchen table with stacks of unpaid bills, his calloused hands trembling as he shuffled through them. Rent, electricity, groceries, each envelope carried another reminder that time was running out. He opened his laptop late into the night, submitting job applications one after another, but no replies came. His savings had already thinned to dust. And through it all, Lily's laughter was the only thing keeping his spirit from shattering completely. At the same time, Davis Technologies began to shake at its foundations. In sleek conference rooms high above the city, Emily faced restless board members demanding answers. Rumors of a data leak had begun to spread like wildfire. "If this continues," one investor barked, "our stock will crash." Emily stood tall, mask of confidence firmly in place, but her chest tightened with every accusation. She had been raised to never show weakness, yet weakness was creeping in from all sides. The late nights grew longer. Emily's office light glowed past midnight, casting her shadow across the skyline. On her desk lay scattered reports, encrypted emails, and endless charts, none of which brought her closer to the truth. She pressed her temples, whispering to herself, "I can't let this company fall, not now." Memories of her father filled the silence, his voice reminding her that strength was everything. But for the first time, she wondered if she was truly strong enough. Meanwhile, Michael tried to shield Lily from the storm of his struggles. He sold his old television to cover a week's worth of groceries. He skipped meals so she could eat. Yet Lily noticed the change. The way her dad's smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. The way he stared at the ceiling long after she had fallen asleep. One evening, she tugged at his sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" Michael hugged her tightly, forcing his voice steady. "Always, sweetheart, always." Back at Davis Technologies, the whispers among employees grew louder. A group of engineers argued in the cafeteria, their words slipping into Emily's ears as she passed. "It's an inside job," one said bitterly. "Someone's feeding our data to competitors." Emily's heart sank. Betrayal from within. The thought was unbearable. She pushed open the boardroom doors later that day, slamming her hand on the table. "Find them," she demanded. "I don't care what it takes. Find them." Her voice echoed, but inside she felt utterly alone. Michael's search for work led him through rejection after rejection. Managers shook their heads, citing overqualification for manual jobs and experience gaps for skilled ones. Each door closed tighter than the last. Standing outside an employment office on a gray afternoon, Michael clenched his fists against the cold wind. The world saw him as broken, too much of one thing, not enough of another. But he wasn't broken. He was a father, and he would fight until his last breath for his little girl. Fate, however, had its own cruel timing. One evening, at a dimly lit gas station, Michael's path crossed with Emily's again. She was filling her sleek black sedan, tension clear in the way her hands gripped the nozzle. Michael stood by his old truck, counting loose coins to buy just enough gas to get home. Their eyes met across the pumps, hers sharp, his steady. For a moment, the distance between CEO and janitor disappeared, leaving only two weary souls in the cold night air. Emily finally broke the silence, her voice softer than he expected. "I shouldn't have fired you like that." Michael looked at her, his face unreadable, then glanced at Lily in the passenger seat, drawing shapes on the window. "Doesn't matter now," he said quietly. But the truth was, it did matter. And neither of them could guess that this fleeting encounter, two broken lives brushing against each other in the dark, was the first spark of a storm that would soon consume them both. 2 mornings later, chaos exploded inside Davis Technologies. Employees huddled around their screens as a chilling message appeared on every monitor. "We have your data. Pay or the world will see it." Shockwaves rippled through the building. Confidential patents, sensitive financial records, everything was at stake. In the boardroom, Emily stood at the head of the table, her face pale but her voice sharp. "This company does not negotiate with criminals," she declared. But deep down, she felt the floor crumbling beneath her. The board members erupted into frantic arguments. "We can't risk exposure," shouted one. "Pay them or we lose everything," barked another. Emily slammed her hand against the table. No, if we pay, they'll only come back for more. Her tone carried authority, but her hands trembled beneath the surface. This was her nightmare, the kind of scandal that could destroy not just the company, but her family's legacy. Her father's name would be dragged through mud, and she would forever be known as the CEO who failed. That night, long after the offices emptied, Emily sat alone under the harsh glow of her desk lamp. The city skyline stretched endlessly outside her window, but for the first time, it felt like a cage closing in. Her inbox buzzed with angry investors, her phone lit up with unanswered calls, yet she couldn't move. She lowered her head into her hands, whispering, "Dad, I don't know what to do." The weight of the empire pressed against her chest until she could barely breathe. Then her phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. The words froze her blood. "You're looking in the wrong place. The breach isn't external." Emily stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. Who would know this? She dismissed it as a hoax at first, until another message arrived minutes later, this time with evidence. Screenshots of system logs, access points, names. Someone inside her company was feeding the hackers, and whoever texted her knew the details too well. Panic and suspicion crashed over her. Emily paced the length of her office, clutching the phone like it was a live grenade. She thought of her executives, her managers, the people she trusted most. Could it be them? The idea of betrayal from within made her stomach twist, yet the proof was undeniable. She tried tracing the number through her company's system, fingers flying across the keyboard. And when the result appeared, she nearly dropped the phone in disbelief. The number belonged to Michael Johnson, the janitor she had fired, the man she had humiliated in front of everyone. Emily's first reaction was anger, her mind racing with accusations. Was he the one behind this? Did he take revenge? But then she remembered his steady eyes at the gas station, the quiet dignity in his voice. He hadn't looked like a man seeking revenge. He had looked like a man trying to survive. Doubt gnawed at her certainty, leaving her restless and confused. Unable to ignore it, Emily made a decision that felt like swallowing fire. She drove to the west side of Chicago, to the modest apartment building she traced the number to. Her black sedan looked out of place in the cracked parking lot, its glossy paint reflecting broken streetlights. She knocked on the door, heart pounding with a mixture of fury and desperation. When the door opened, there stood Michael, tall, broad, calm, as if he had been expecting her. "Michael," I demanded, holding up my phone, "why are you sending me this?" Lily peeked out from behind her father, clutching a stuffed animal. Michael's gaze softened at his daughter, then returned to Emily. "Because you're not fighting outsiders," he said quietly. "You're fighting your own." His words struck her harder than any boardroom argument. In that dim hallway, with a little girl watching from the shadows, Emily realized the truth. The man she had cast aside might be the only one who could save everything she was about to lose. Emily stepped into Michael's small apartment, her sharp heels clicking against the worn wooden floor. She looked around, stacked bills on the table, children's drawings taped proudly on the fridge. It was a world far removed from her marble office and glass towers. "Talk," she ordered, though her voice wavered. Michael motioned for her to sit, his calmness in stark contrast to her tension. Lily slipped quietly into her room, sensing the gravity of the moment. Michael sat across from Emily, pulling out a battered laptop from under the couch. His fingers moved swiftly, bringing up screens of code, logs, and hidden trails of data. "I've been watching your system since before you fired me," he admitted. Emily's eyes narrowed. "Why?" she demanded. Michael met her gaze steadily. "Because I saw something wrong, and I couldn't stand by while the company my hands built, even as a janitor, was being ripped apart." Lines of digital footprints filled the screen. Michael pointed at them, his voice steady. "This isn't random hackers. Someone high up, someone with authority is leaking access codes. They're selling your secrets." Emily's chest tightened as the names scrolled before her eyes. She recognized them, people she trusted, people who sat across from her in meetings, smiling, shaking hands. Her lips parted, but no words came. Betrayal was staring her in the face, undeniable. As the night deepened, the air between them thickened with urgency. Michael pieced together evidence like a surgeon saving a life, his strong hands surprisingly delicate over the keyboard. Emily leaned closer, her breath shallow as she watched the truth unfold. Every click revealed a deeper rot inside her company. "We need proof strong enough to take them down," Emily whispered, her eyes burning with both fury and fear. Michael nodded. "Then let's get it, tonight." Hours later, the storm broke in the boardroom. Emily stood at the head of the long oak table, flanked by security officers. Michael remained in the shadows behind her, silent but unyielding. "The leak has been found," Emily announced, her voice carrying an edge of steel. Gasps rippled through the room as she laid down the evidence. One by one, the guilty executives paled, their masks of confidence crumbling under the weight of undeniable proof. The traitor was revealed, and there was no escape. Security stormed forward, handcuffing the man who had been her right hand for years. His eyes blazed with defiance as he spat, "You'll regret this, Emily. You're too weak to hold this empire together." Emily's jaw clenched, but she stood tall. For the first time, her strength wasn't a mask. It was real, born of fire and betrayal. Michael watched her from the corner, pride flickering in his steady gaze. He had given her the tools, but she had found her courage. The climax reached its breaking point as the hackers, suddenly cut off from their inside man, tried one last desperate strike. Screens across the building flickered, alarms blared, chaos threatened to consume everything. Michael rushed to the control room, Emily close behind, their voices overlapping as they fought against the storm of code. "They're in the servers," shouted an engineer. "Not for long," Michael growled, his fingers flying over the keyboard like a soldier deflecting bullets. Then silence. The screen steadied, the alarm stopped. Michael leaned back, chest heaving, sweat glistening across his forehead. Emily exhaled, her whole body trembling with relief. The company was safe. For a moment, the powerful CEO and the invisible janitor simply looked at each other, two lives colliding at the edge of ruin. And in that silence, Emily knew, without him, everything would have been lost. Without him, she would have fallen. The following morning, the building felt different. Where fear and chaos had reigned the day before, now there was a fragile sense of relief. Employees walked through the halls whispering Michael's name, some in disbelief, others with admiration. Emily stood by her office window, watching the sunrise paint the skyline gold. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. The company had survived, and she owed it to the man she once dismissed. Later that day, Emily asked Michael to meet her in her office. He entered hesitantly, still in his worn gray jumpsuit, shoulders tense. The vast room, with its polished desk and city view, felt worlds away from his small apartment. Emily rose from her chair, her expression softer than he had ever seen. "Michael," she began, her voice low, "I misjudged you. I treated you unfairly, and yet you saved everything." Her eyes glistened, though she tried to hide it. Michael shifted uncomfortably, his rough hands clasped together. "I didn't do it for you," he said gently. "I did it because it was the right thing, and because I can't let people like that win." His words carried no bitterness, only quiet truth. Emily nodded, her throat tightening. For a woman who built walls around her heart, it was rare to feel gratitude this deep. She realized, in that moment, strength wasn't just about power, it was about humility. Emily then made an offer that stunned him. "I want you to lead our cybersecurity division, full salary, full benefits. You're the reason we're standing today." Michael's eyes widened, disbelief flickering across his face. He thought of Lily, of late nights worrying about food and rent. He thought of the life he had lost and the chance now to reclaim it. Slowly, he asked, "Why me? You could hire anyone." Emily's reply was simple, "Because you care, and that's what makes you different." At home that evening, Michael sat across from Lily at their small kitchen table, the letter of offer resting between them. "What does it mean, Daddy?" she asked, her eyes wide with hope. Michael smiled, a real smile that reached his tired eyes. "It means things are going to change, sweetheart. No more worrying about the bills, no more late nights wondering." Lily leapt into his arms, her laughter echoing through the room like music. For the first time in years, Michael believed her future could be bright. In the weeks that followed, the company slowly regained its strength. Michael, now in a crisp suit instead of a janitor's jumpsuit, walked the halls with a quiet authority. Employees who once passed him by without a glance now greeted him with respect. Emily often found herself watching him from across the room, struck by his calm presence. He wasn't just fixing systems, he was restoring trust, something even she had struggled to do. The building felt alive again. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily and Michael stood side by side in the empty boardroom. The city stretched out before them, glittering with endless lights. "You've given this company a second chance," Emily said softly. Michael shook his head. "We gave it a second chance, together." Their eyes met, and for the first time, it wasn't about CEO and employee or power and survival. It was about two people who had carried heavy burdens and found strength in each other. Back at home, Lily slipped her tiny hand into Michael's as they walked down the street, the world suddenly brighter than before. "Daddy," she whispered, "I always told you, you're a hero." Michael smiled, his heart swelling. He realized saving the company was important, but being the man his daughter believed him to be, that was his greatest victory. And as Emily watched from a distance that evening, a soft smile on her lips, she knew their story wasn't just about business. It was about redemption, family, and the kind of courage that changes lives forever. Months later, Davis Technologies stood stronger than ever. The crisis had passed, but the memory of it lingered like a scar, a reminder of how fragile power could be. At the annual shareholder meeting, Emily walked onto the grand stage, greeted by thunderous applause. Her black suit gleamed under the lights, but this time there was a warmth in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She wasn't just a CEO anymore. She was a woman who had been humbled, changed. When the room quieted, Emily's voice carried steady across the hall. "This company survived not because of me, but because of someone we all overlooked, a man who showed us that courage and loyalty don't come with a title or an office." She turned, extending a hand. From the side of the stage, Michael appeared, dressed in a simple suit that fit him like destiny. The crowd rose to their feet, applauding louder than ever. For the first time, Michael wasn't invisible. Standing before hundreds of powerful investors, Michael felt his throat tighten. He wasn't used to the spotlight, wasn't used to being seen. But he thought of Lily at home, probably glued to the TV, eyes sparkling with pride. He leaned toward the microphone and said softly, "I was just doing my job. Not the job I was hired for, but the job that needed to be done." The hall fell silent, his words sinking deeper than any rehearsed speech ever could. After the meeting, as they walked off stage, Emily touched Michael's arm gently. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Michael gave her a small smile. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Just remember, every person in this building matters, even the ones you don't notice." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with a truth she would never forget. It was no longer about saving her company. It was about seeing people differently. At home, Michael found Lily waiting at the door, her arms wrapping tightly around him. "Daddy, I saw you on TV. You were amazing," she squealed, bouncing with excitement. Michael lifted her into his arms, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I just told the truth, sweet pea," he murmured. "That's all I did." But in her eyes, it was more than enough. To her, he wasn't just amazing. He was everything. Emily, too, changed in ways she hadn't expected. She began to walk through the lobby each morning with softer steps, greeting employees she once overlooked. She remembered their names, asked about their families, listened to their worries. Power no longer blinded her, it grounded her. And though her path and Michael's remained different, there was an unspoken bond between them, a respect born in fire, unshakable and real. The story of the CEO and the janitor became more than office gossip. It spread beyond the company walls, inspiring others who felt invisible in their own lives. It reminded people that titles mean little compared to character, and that heroes often wear the simplest uniforms. For Michael, the greatest victory wasn't in saving billions, it was in proving to his daughter and to himself that he had never stopped being enough. And so, the lesson was clear. Never underestimate the quiet ones, the unseen hands, the overlooked souls. Greatness isn't measured by the office you sit in, but by the courage you carry when no one is watching. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe for more inspiring stories like this, because sometimes the people you least expect are the ones who can change the world.